street. Say what you got. You used to think you owned the street. Well, pack your bags and your ass is dead meat.
How's it going, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Lowdown Show right here on No Holds Barred Wrestling Podcast, your Canadian wrestling podcast that talks about the WWE No Holds Barred on anything we say, pun intended. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at No Holds Barred WP. You can follow myself at Real Kyle Masters, and you can follow us on Instagram, No Holds Barred WP as well. If you want to listen to us on the go, iTunes is where you can find us on Stitcher Radio and Spreaker. Spreaker is a glorious podcast app that's available for all Android and Apple devices. It's free to download, free to make a profile, and you can chat with us when we are live on the air and listen to all previous episodes of the podcast as well. If you want to watch any video versions of the podcast, youtube.com/NHBWR is where you can find that. You can find unboxings, 2K content, and all that sort of stuff on there as well. So hit that subscribe button, that bell icon for all upload updates. I'm your host, the self-proclaimed greatest host, Kyle Masters as always, and yes, the Lowdown Show is different now. As you guys seen on Twitter, we announced earlier this week, Corporate Cappy has officially left the podcast. We wish him well in his future endeavors. He's got a big project in the works with himself and branching off and going on his own and doing his own YouTube thing, which is fine. So all power to him, and thank you, Cappy, for all the work you've done in this podcast. You can see if you watched the video version of this podcast, you saw the little tribute I did for him right in the beginning of the video. So thank you, Cappy, and apologize actually for starting the podcast a little early. Got some stuff to do today, so I had to start a little bit early, but I'm going to do this on my own. As for the future of the podcast, I'm not sure yet. I know I want to continue it. Whether it be by myself or not is one thing that's going to be determined soon, but as for today, I'm going to do this episode by myself, and I think I said to Cuba Girl that I was going to open the Skype lines. Unfortunately, I won't be opening them up today. I don't really have time. I'm just going to get you guys the NXT review today, and then we'll work something out. But also, Headlines is on a hold right now. I'm still figuring that out. I kind of want to take a moment and sit down, kind of branch what I'm going to do with this podcast going forward and what's going to happen and what I want to do. If I'm going to continue this on my own or if I'm going to branch out and go wait for a coach to come in, then we'll restart it. I will keep you guys informed, so keep an eye on the No Holds Barred podcast account. I'll put the tweets on there if anything happens. I've already been reached out by someone to say they would love to co-host with me, so we'll see what happens, and we'll let you guys know on the future of this podcast for sure. But as for today, guys, if you don't know what the Lowdown Show is, we'll review NXT every single week. I keep saying we. I'm going to have to get in the habit of not saying it anymore until I get a new co-host, but yeah, we review NXT every single week because I feel it is the A show. I do not follow the main roster anymore. I may go back to reviewing the main roster now I'm on my own. I don't know yet because that's a lot of work to do, and then, especially by yourself. Who knows? Again, it's all stuff that's up in the works right now, so I'll let you guys know on what we're going to do with this podcast going forward. Anyways, talk about NXT here on the Lowdown Show because I feel it is the A show. It does so much better booking-wise and match-wise than the main roster, so that's why I review it every single week because I honestly feel good watching NXT. I know you guys out there do the same. And we had a jam-packed episode of NXT this week to get into. Main roster had their superstar shakeup. I'm still on the fence about it. Like, I loved some of the moves they did, don't get me wrong, but the shakeup this week, SmackDown looks a little bit more stacked now, which is great. Raw looks insane. I mean, it just, to me, like, you can change the entire roster around and mix it all up, but it's the booking-wise, it's the creative-wise that's not going to change. Unless there's a change there, then you're going to get the same crap. You're going to love your rosters. You can love them as much as you want. You're like, oh, look at these dream matches we're going to get. But do you actually have faith in what creative is actually going to do with those matches? Like, they already rushed Miz and Daniel Bryan off the bat. If you didn't see, they're already announcing him that for those two to perform at a live event in the UK, not even televised. Their first match together, finally, that we've been waiting for this, is going to be on a UK live event. As much as, like, I don't want to take anything away from the UK fans, and they're going to get an awesome match out of that, that should be saved for SummerSlam. These guys shouldn't be touching each other until SummerSlam. You build an epic match, and you have an epic match at SummerSlam. The fact that these guys are having a match at a live event, it just takes so much away from it. It's I don't know. To me, it's such a waste. So you can change the rosters as much as you can. You can call up as much as you can from NXT to try to boost those rosters. But the fact is, if you don't change the way you book the show and your creative ideas, then you're never going to have a different type of show. You're going to have the different people, but the same crap. You're going to have this different people on SmackDown, but you're going to have the same shitty booking as always. And it sucks because there's a lot of people on SmackDown now that don't deserve that, and they're probably going to take a big backseat because of it. Like, the big move that shocked me was Samoa Joe going over to SmackDown. I really didn't think that was going to happen because he's doing this whole thing with Roman. I thought that was going to continue even after Backlash, but now that he's on SmackDown, it's like, hey, what the fuck now? Like, you just did all these 2-week promos with Roman and Samoa Joe, and now all of a sudden Samoa Joe's on SmackDown. Like, I don't really get that. I don't know. Anyways, it is what it is in the main roster. We'll see what happens. Oh, my cord's going all over the place here. Let's talk about NXT. NXT this week, huge episode. Is the first taping going forward after NXT TakeOver New Orleans. If you guys saw NXT last week, that's basically what they pre-show taped before TakeOver New Orleans. Nothing really big happened. We had the War Raiders, or War Machine, if you guys know more as, debut. I guess they really have a debut match. They kind of just interfered in the Street Profits and Tito Sabatelli and Riddick Moss match and made a name for themselves. And this week they actually had a match in their NXT debut match, and we'll get into that when the time comes. So we'll start off. We open up NXT this week with Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae. So huge reaction from the NXT crowd. Obviously, Johnny Gargano winning that huge match against Tommaso Ciampa, NXT TakeOver, which is huge. I mean, Johnny Gargano is now officially reinstated with NXT. I mean, I'm on the fence about it, because I thought really that this was going to be a prime time, especially because they did the shake-up so early. This is going to be the prime time to get Johnny Gargano up on the main roster and get him feuding with some people and maybe do something on SmackDown, get a good boost. But what they did this week actually kind of makes sense, and I'm kind of intrigued on what they're going to do. I thought that at least Ciampa was going to come out and do something. I'm not sure what they're doing with him now. But yeah, Gargano opens up NXT with Candice LeRae, both wearing the Johnny Wrestling t-shirts. The crowd's already chanting Johnny Wrestling during his entrance, before the entrance music even stopped. So the guy getting a big reaction. Definitely one of the favorites down there in Full Sail University, and he should be. The guy's amazing. He gets on the mic. He's talking about his match at NXT TakeOver New Orleans and his history with Tommaso Ciampa and the big feud that these guys have had over the last couple of months. And basically, like, Gargano's been defined by 2 words, and that is Tommaso Ciampa the last couple of months. But he says he's back where he belongs, and right in NXT, which is great. Over the live chat really quick, we have Tiffany from Dada's podcast. Excuse me, I forgot to do this. Tiffany from Dada's podcast, guys. This Saturday, we're going to be doing an interesting podcast on her channel, so go check it out. We're going to be doing a That Coffee podcast. We've been talking about this for a while. We basically went to she ordered some K-Cups, I ordered some K-Cups, or I went to a store and got some K-Cups. But you're going to be doing an interesting coffee podcast. Coffee is like a big thing with me. If you guys don't know, I love coffee. I love different flavors of coffee. I love trying new flavors of coffee, so we're going to do a whole podcast on it. It's going to be Saturday at around 12:30, I believe, on her channel, so look out for the link on the No Holds Barred Twitter account. We also got CupidGirl125. What's going on, CupidGirl125? It says Candice and Johnny are just the cutest couple in pro wrestling. I definitely agree. And Tiffany, take my money for him and Block. Yeah, that's going to be in sick match next week. When I'll get into that later on in the review here. But anyways, back into it. He's talking about his TakeOver New Orleans match being reinstated. Johnny says that Johnny Wrestling and Candice Wrestling have one piece of unfinished business, and Candice gets on the mic and says she's going to handle it hers tonight when she goes one-on-one with Selena Vega in the main event of NXT, which is awesome. Gargano gets back on the mic and says that if Almas tries to get involved, he will be dropped like his name is Tommaso Ciampa. So Johnny coming out with a good chirp there. And then Gargano says that after this is all settled, there's only one place for him. There's a new NXT champion, and you're looking at his first challenger. So, wow, big statement by Johnny Gargano here, coming out and saying that he's going to be the first challenger for Aleister Black and the new NXT champion. So, that's crazy to hear, but Almas and Gargano and Candice LeRae looking to wrap up the Almas and Vega feud tonight in the main event. After this, we had Killian Dane. He cut a pretty intense promo on Lars Sullivan here. I thought it was really well done. I'm not sure where he was. Again, he's part of Sanity, so they're in somewhere in the locker room or backstage somewhere that's just hidden. But I love the promo work they do in NXT. It's by far the greatest thing ever. Way better than what the main roster can pull together, which is pretty sad. But really well done promo here by Killian Dane. We moved on to my boy Ricochet. You guys know that he's my favorite. I've been following him ever since he's been Prince Puma and Lucha Underground. Is basically where I started first watching him hardcore. Guy's insane. His athleticism is just unreal and way, way, way better than I ever expected it to be. So this was NXT or Ricochet's Full Sail University debut. He had his debut match at TakeOver in New Orleans, as you guys seen. That was probably the most amazing debut he's ever. I think he could ever have. He's facing Fabian Eichner this episode of NXT, which is interesting because the whole match, the commentary team was like talking about his European like descent of Fabian Eichner and all this stuff, and I'm sitting there going, I remember when we were at the live event here in St. Catharines, and they were billing this guy from Canada and billing Fabian Eichner from St. Catharines, and I remember going to his profile and looking him up. Like, there was nowhere in his history he's ever been born or lived in St. Catharines. It was freaking hilarious. It was just a way to try to get him over, and I remember it failing hardcore at that NXT live event. Anyways, I love Ricochet's entrance. I love the way they do it with that whole him like doing his pose and then that the lights around him. Really, really well done. Love his entrance theme. It goes well with him. So I applaud CFO $sign for making that theme music and the NXT team for that entrance. Very, very well done. I want to point out that Ricochet is very good at selling. I don't know if you guys watched this match. Go back and watch it if you haven't. Very, very good at selling. The selling work for Ricochet is awesome, and it's a very good trait to have in pro wrestling, so I very applaud Ricochet on his selling work. Fabian does look impressive. Not to take anything from him. The guy, I can see some potential in this guy. Maybe he is a future top heel or a future big heel in the company, so look out for Fabian Eichner. I don't think they're done not using this guy, man. I think they have a lot. I think they see a lot in Fabian Eichner, so I don't think this is the last we're going to be seeing of Fabian Eichner in NXT. Decent back and forth matchup. Ricochet knocks Fabian off the rope at one point and hits his 630 senton, which is probably the sickest finisher I've ever seen for the win. I love that finisher. It's such a well done move, and he hits it off so clean. After the match, Ricochet gets interviewed after, says he loves making this Full Sail University debut, and this is where he saw top superstars like make a name for themselves like Bayley, Sami Zayn, and even Seth Rollins. But now it's his turn to turn things up a notch and to make a name for himself and to prove to the entire NXT universe that he is the one and only Ricochet. So, unreal match by Ricochet and a good Full Sail University debut. I'm looking for big things out of Ricochet here in NXT. I think they have a lot of faith in this guy. I mean, look at the work they put in his entrance alone, and then they give him that promo after. So I think we can expect some big things from Ricochet as well as we should be, because this guy is probably one of their best talents on the roster right now. So I'm hoping for big things out of Ricochet, maybe a mid-title feud or maybe even a main title feud in the future, man. I think the guy does deserve it in that case. Over to live chat, Cuba Girl 125 saying if Fabian and Ricochet had a couple more minutes, then it would have been a match. It might have been a match the whole night. Yeah, probably. I would have guessed that. And then Tiffany saying the abs on him should be against the law. Cuba Girl 125 also saying Mickie James and Ricochet, two of the best sellers in WWE right now. I definitely agree with that. Cuba Girl, Mickie James is incredibly good at selling. It's just Ricochet in a Sami match, Sami Zayn. Oh, that'd be insane. I mean, there's so many dream matches you can think of with Ricochet, so that's why this guy is a really good piece of talent, and I'm glad that NXT went out and got him. After this, they showed footage of the War Raiders debut, or making their debut at that NXT taping before TakeOver last week, and then making an impact. We also got an EC3 vignette, which is very, very cocky promo. So it looks like this guy is shaping up to be one of the top heels in NXT, and I love that. I think the guy has got the perfect personality for it. He's got the look for it. He's got the music. I'm loving everything about EC3, so I'm hoping they do a lot of big things with this guy, and I think they're going to be doing that in NXT. So I see a lot of potential for this guy to go far in NXT and be one of the top names. You look at the roster NXT has right now and the people on it, and so far we've had the call-ups, and it looks like they're all done with that. NXT looks really, really good right now, so I'm glad we got something like that out of EC3 and we didn't just get nothing out of him. So it's better than nothing. We could have had a match, could have had an in-ring promo, but I think the vignette was pretty good for itself. And then right after that, we had Lars Sullivan cut a promo on Killian Dane. It looked like he was like between two giant trucks or something. I don't know. It went well with Lars Sullivan, his old character, and the music they're playing in the background while he's doing his promo. This guy sounds exactly like Kane. I don't know if you guys get the same thing, but when he's cutting his promos and you're sitting there listening to him, if you close your eyes, it's like Kane is talking. Like I'm talking like Ruthless Aggression era Kane, back when he was feuding with like Matt Hardy and The Undertaker back in like between 2003 and 2006 kind of Kane. Just listen to him, man, and close your eyes, and you'll see what I mean. But yeah, moving on here, we had the War Raiders, or War Machine. I can hear the crowd still chanting War Machine during this match, which was hilarious. I don't think anyone's going to forget that. But the War Raiders facing some enhancement talent. And these guys looking like they're the second coming of Deuce and Domino. And if you guys don't know who that is, look it up. WWE Deuce and Domino, when they were in the WWE, probably one of the biggest jobber teams. I actually think they won the tag team titles at one point. I don't remember. Anyways, these guys' names were JC and Chris, so another name to add to the enhancement list of names that we've talked about on this podcast. Right off the bat, Rowe hits this like huge knee and just knocks the guy clean out, and the other guy tags himself in. He gets decimated by Hansen. Basically, Hansen and Rowe go at work on these guys. Eventually hit their finisher for the win, a very dominant victory, and just another one of those showings that NXT loves to do with their new talent, to basically send a message to the other people on the talent that War Raiders are here, and they're here to take over the tag team division. It's going to be interesting to see who's going to go up against these guys. I can see War Machine, Heavy Machinery being some guys going up to them, being one of their top tests. I actually thought AOP would stick around and do something with these guys. Maybe they still have one match left, because I know they do it sometimes where they both appear on both shows. AOP has appeared 2 weeks in a row on Raw, so I doubt they're ever going to do anything back in NXT. I think Vince took a look at them and said, nope, no more. they're mine now. But I would have loved to see an AOP and War Machine feud. At least I was hoping for that, but I guess not. So it's going to be interesting to see who comes up against the War Raiders and who's going to be like their feud. Anyways, back to the live chat. Got Glorious Greg joining the live chat. What's going on? Tiffany saying need tickets for NXT Brooklyn. I'd love to come down for that. I'm still debating on what am I going to do for that. Am I going to be saving for next year's WrestleMania, or am I going to go and do a whole SummerSlam thing? Still debating on that. Cuba Girl agrees. The Kane vibes. Deuce and Domino's grandson, probably. Yeah, what was the cherry of the group? They needed the cherry, the manager, the chick on the roller skates. Glorious Greg saying Chris Starr and Riley Apex versus Deuce and Domino for match of the year. Yeah, right. Anyways, back to NXT. This was pretty cool. I love this. It's showing more and more how much of a badass the Shayna Baszler is, and I love the work they're putting into her and establishing that. I can definitely see in the not very far future, but in the future, when she finally gets called up, that Ronda, who's going to be built up as a big badass, and Shayna, them going one-on-one with each other in the future. We know it's going to happen, but we had some Performance Center footage here. Shayna Baszler saying that there's a woman's locker room meeting that she's late for, but she doesn't care because she's going to go in there and set some new rules. So she walks in and tells, I think it was, I forget who was talking. I don't remember what her name was, and she was told her to shut up, basically, and says, oh, you guys didn't take this off yet. Goes over to Ember Moon's old locker room and just rips off the name tag and then sticks her little Queen of Spades in there. I love that. And she tells the locker room to it's either you get in line or get out. If you're scared, get out. So basically a really badass statement here by Shayna Baszler. Dakota Kai gets up to go fill up her water bottle, and then Shayna Baszler gets right in her face and starts chirping her as she's leaving. And then she leaves the door. She's like, yeah, that's right, you do leave. And, just Shayna Baszler just adding more cockiness and more of this like badass feel, if you know what I'm saying here. I love the way they're doing that with Shayna Baszler. She goes back to the rest of the locker room here and says that you either get in line behind me or get run over. So that's another one I'm interested to see what's going to happen out of this. So I know it looks like they're playing more Dakota Kai. Looks like Dakota Kai might be the first challenger for Shayna Baszler, and maybe at NXT TakeOver Chicago will be them two one-on-one, because it's going to be hard to see who's going to be the one to finally take down Shayna Baszler. I've mentioned this in other lowdown shows before, that I can't see anyone right now on their current roster can be that person unless there's going to be this big underdog win over Shayna Baszler. If not, a next dominant girl, maybe the next Horseman that comes in. Who knows? But I love the whole work they're putting in with Shayna. So it's going to be interesting to see what's going on with Shayna Baszler in the future with that. But I can kind of see Dakota Kai getting that first shot just because of what they did in that promo with her leaving the locker room and Shayna getting in her face. So we'll see what happens with that. We had a vignette for a new superstar after this. Well, not really a new superstar. He was a jobber since like 2014 NXT. He went by different names. Now he goes by Kona Reeves, saying soon everyone will be calling him NXT's finest. He's got the finest smile, the finest jewelry, the finest hair. This guy basically looks like Johnny Nitro 2.0, basically. I get the same vibes as that. Hopefully he's got the same wrestling skill in that case, because if he's going to have all that stuff, he's going to have to back it up. He says he makes his return. Everyone will experience the finest, Kona Reeves, and they show that he's going to be re-debuting in 2 weeks. I can see him against Velveteen Dream. These guys almost have a similar kind of character. Maybe EC3. It will all depend. We'll see how good Kona Reeves is, because I can't really sit here and say that I'm excited for Kona Reeves because I really haven't seen anything of him. I went back. I had to research it and go back and see what the hell he was all about. He was a jobber to a lot of people. He was in the first Dusty Rhodes Classic as a quick replacement for someone. It was an ag. I need to get more out of Kona Reeves. We need more of an offensive out of this guy. So we're going to have to see what happens with Kona Reeves. And guys, we got to get a big impact out of him, or else he's just going to get eaten alive. So hopefully it's a big impact. He'll probably face an enhancement talent next week or in 2 weeks. We'll see what happens. But if he wants to make an impact, I'd say just face someone huge off the bat, like a Velveteen Dream or EC3, and make a name for themselves. You know what I mean? So we'll see what happens with Kona Reeves. Next, we had Lars Sullivan and Killian Dane's match. It was a no disqualification match. It was very, very intense, very brutal match. Sullivan even hit this like suplex on the outside. It looked pretty brutal. So these guys just beat the living shit out of each other. Eventually, Lars goes under the ring and throws a bunch of chairs into the ring. I think there's like 4 or 5 of them. But Dane kind of fights back and gains momentum. Dane then goes to the outside and grabs a table. The crowd loves the table. You know, the goon crowds love their tables. Gets it into the ring and sets it up in the corner, like on top of the turnbuckle. Sullivan puts a chair on the down Dane eventually and tries that flying headbutt he usually does, but goes like head first right into the chair, which eventually leads to Dane regaining his momentum and then doing a giant cross body through the table into the corner, which is pretty cool. These guys just literally beat the living shit out of each other this entire match. Dane was eventually bleeding out of his nose too. Like, these guys just kicked the living shit out of each other. Dane regains his momentum near the end of the match, but Lars counters back with hits him off when he's coming off the top turnbuckle with the chair, and then he lays a couple of chairs out in the middle of the ring and then does the freak accident on top of all those chairs for the win, and Lars Sullivan coming out on top. I think this is just a kind of a send-off match for Killian Dane, as we now know he's been drafted over to, or not drafted, appearing now on SmackDown. Sanity will be making their debut. All 3 members, except for Nikki Cross, will be on SmackDown now, put over on SmackDown during the Superstar Shakeup. I think he got busted open. There was like a move earlier in the match. The camera work wasn't really that good for it, but I think I know exactly where we got that spot that made his nose bleed. You'll have to go back and watch it. I'll have to go back and watch it too. Anyways, we moved on from this, and we had a very well-done promo highlighting the Gargano and Almas story, but it was also focusing on Candice LeRae and Zelina just for their main event match tonight. I thought it was very well done. I very loved this promo. It's probably the best promo of the night, so kudos to the NXT promo team. Next, we had a pretty cool photography promo shoot here with Undisputed Era, all of them boosting themselves up, talking about NXT TakeOver and them winning the gold, Adam Cole winning the new NXT North American Championship, and they all pose for their photo, and then it's announced that Undisputed Era will be live on NXT next week to talk about what happened at NXT TakeOver with the whole Roderick Strong joining the Undisputed Era. I know Cappy wasn't too happy about that. But we also had I also interviewed Pete Dunne leaving outside at one point tonight or last night during NXT, and he says you'll know my answer in a couple of weeks when I come back. So we don't get anything from Pete Dunne until then. They also announced that Adam Cole's going to face Oney Lorcan, of all people, for the North American Championship next week. Very random, but hey, we're getting an NXT. We're already getting a championship match for that North American title, and it's going to be against Oney Lorcan, the first defense. I don't know what that guy did to deserve a North American Championship match, but we're getting it next week, and I don't see Oney Lorcan putting up any kind of test against Adam Cole. Anyways, we move on to the main event here. Candice LeRae versus Zelina Vega. I can't believe they got some main event time. This was pretty cool. Very, very short match, though. I think the main focus of this was what happened after the match. Already Almas making his impact into the match by distracting LeRae on the top rope. Zelina Vega taking advantage of that, but we also had Gargano coming out to stop that kind of nonsense from Cien Almas. Eventually, Candice locks in her Gargano escape on Zelina Vega. Almas tries to get in the ring and break it up, but Gargano counters it into a Gargano escape of himself, and they both tap at the same time. So very, very quick work, and to end off this feud between these two for good. Gargano gets on the mic and congratulates his wife, saying that was awesome, and the crowd chanting that was awesome, but says now that they've taken care of Almas and Vega, it's time to take care of their other business, and calls out Aleister Black. Black comes out and accepts Johnny's challenge and says that if you want it, next week you shall have it. Wow. So next week, it wasn't really announced officially, and I haven't really gone on Twitter to see anything, but apparently we're going to get Aleister Black versus Johnny Gargano for the NXT Championship already next week. I thought this would be maybe a TakeOver, but we're already getting this next week. Maybe they have other things in mind for Black at TakeOver, but it's going to be interesting to see what if they actually have this title match next week. Does Ciampa come back and get involved, extending that feud with Johnny Gargano for another rematch? I can kind of see that happening. Or maybe someone gets involved to get Aleister out of that versus Johnny Gargano, and then he goes into a feud with someone else who interferes in this match. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens next week. It's going to be very, very awesome. I mean, we're getting Johnny Gargano versus Aleister Black next week. This is like amazing. Cooper Girl 125. It's like looking at Daniel Bryan versus Undertaker in NXT. Yeah, that's interesting. Oh yeah, Cooper Girl. What Kyle O'Reilly said in that promo. Oh, Mr. Photographer, I'm ready for my close-up. Undisputed Era is just so awesome. I love those guys. But next week we're getting Adam Cole versus Oney Lorcan, and apparently Johnny Gargano versus Aleister Black for the championship. So that's going to be interesting to see next week on NXT. So we already got two big matches next week. We have Undisputed Era's promo or in-ring promo they're going to do explaining themselves from NXT TakeOver New Orleans. So NXT leaving you already next week with more hype, man. This is what I love about NXT. They leave you with more hype show after show. They're not leaving you bored. They're not leaving you pissed off. They're not leaving you going, oh, do I have to turn into the NXT next week? It's like the main roster. Do I have to turn into SmackDown next week? It's amazing. Tiffany, I'm glad I got on the NXT train. Thanks, Kyle and Cabby. No problem. NXT is the way to go, Tiff. It's just I feel good watching NXT. I don't miss an episode. It's amazing. That's why we review it right here in the podcast. So NXT this week, huge. With the whole ending of Zelina Vega and Almas and Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae feud, and we all know Almas and Vega are now on SmackDown. It's going to be interesting to see what they do on SmackDown, how they're going to be using Almas. I really hope they push him into the main event level caliber, because the guy definitely deserves it, especially with Zelina Vega's mic work. He's definitely going to need her. But NXT is going to be huge next week as well, and we had a big episode this week, so yeah. As I said before, guys, in the beginning of the podcast, I'm not sure what we're doing with the future of this podcast. It's still up in the air. I'm trying to work it out if I'm going to get a new co-host or not. I've already had someone talk to me already, so we'll see what happens. Oh, yeah, Nigel wasn't there this week, Cuba Girl, because he actually had a baby daughter born, so good for him. Glorious Greg, trying to get my dad to go to an NXT TakeOver, which would be our first NXT show live in person. Do it, Glorious Greg. If you can get to an NXT TakeOver, man, do it, man. I highly suggest it. The one I went to at New Orleans was amazing. That was my second ever TakeOver. I went to the TakeOver Toronto one. This one was amazing. It's still quoted as the best TakeOver they've ever done, so it was awesome. The crowd's awesome, and the matches are just beyond par. Again, guys, as I said, with this podcast, still up in the air, still trying to figure out what I'm going to do with the future of it. So stay tuned to our Twitter channel. As for this Saturday, guys, no headlines. Headlines are still on a halt. But I will be on Tiffany's podcast this Saturday. We're doing a That Coffee podcast. Tune into that on her YouTube channel, That Ass Podcast. We're going to be doing a That Coffee podcast, a whole episode on coffee. We got some different coffees we're going to be brewing and talking about, and just doing a whole coffee. Come chill. It's going to be like a relaxing time. So come chill with us on YouTube this Saturday. I'll put the promo poster out on the Twitter channel as well. As for that, guys, that's going to wrap it up. I know it was very quick, only a 30-minute podcast, but until I figure out what we're going to do with this podcast, that's what's going to happen just for this week. So thank you for tuning in to the Lowdown Show, guys, your NXT review source for all NXT reviews right here on No Holds Barred Wrestling Podcast, for Canadian Wrestling Podcast. It talks about the NXT and No Holds Barred, anything we say, pun intended. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at No Holds Barred WP. You can follow myself at Real Kyle Masters, and you can follow us on Instagram, No Holds Barred WP. You can also follow us, or you want to listen to us on the go, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and Spreakers, where you can find us. Spreaker is a glorious podcast app that is available for all Android and Apple devices. It's free to download, free to make a profile. You can chat with us live on the air. If you want to watch any video versions of the podcast, youtube.com/NHBWR is where you can find us on there as well for all video versions of the podcast, unboxings, and 2K content. I'm your host, as always, guys, the self-proclaimed greatest host, Kyle Masters, and I'm here reminding you to keep it on the lowdown.
You're looking at the real deal now. Gonna kick this sorry ass out on the street. Bring it on. What you gonna do about it? Bring it on. Is that what you got? Bring it on. So what you gonna do about it? Bring it on. Gonna kick your sorry ass, but what you gonna do? You're looking at the real deal now. Gonna kick your sorry ass out on the street. Is that what you got? You used to think you own the street. Well, back to back, and your ass is dead meat.